1% of successful people in terms of age and revenue. Average age of a millionaire would be 40 plus. How do you guys look at risk?
I got into the insurance business. I realized that you can do creatively fulfilling work, even in a boring business.
When we first started Burger 28, our EBITDA margin was like 38 to 45.
A pioneer when it comes to celebrity management.
You can be TikTok famous and you can be real life famous. Social media is glorifying entrepreneurship, putting out fires daily. Who signs up for that?
You just need to be extremely efficient to the point of insanity.
If you're passionate in a business where everyone else is rational and you're the irrational, crazy one, you can make progress faster. Alfred needs a celebrity manager now.
I'm here.
Hi everyone, my name is Asim and we're back to the NoBSness podcast where we talk about business without the BS. Actionable items where you hear people talk about how they've survived, how they've flourished and how they've grown their businesses. I've been doing this for close to 7 episodes now and I run 3 companies. I run LPS, which essentially is a full service new age creative agency. I run Stream Shriek, which is a gaming services agency. And then finally Planner, which is an ERP implementation agency. And through all this, what I have figured out is the fact that I'm so caught up in my vertical race lanes that I don't get to learn horizontally. And this is my attempt to do so. I speak to people, I speak to the brightest minds to understand how they do it without the BS in their business. I've got 3 amazing, brilliant young minds in Dubai who essentially are disrupting their businesses. And I'd love to speak to all the 3 of them today. I'm excited. It's the first time I'm meeting all of them. Avinash, founder of InsuranceMarket.AE. We all know Alfred, the quintessential icon in our lives right now. Can't leave us anywhere we go, which is great. That's a compliment. And then we've got Alex from the famous viral Burger 28 Drool-worthy burgers. And you would have definitely seen some of his creations on your social media screen. And I'd love to understand how that happens. And then finally, Karin's a trailblazer. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that she's someone who is a pioneer when it comes to celebrity management in the region. We haven't met, but I've admired your work for a really long time. All of you, pleasure to have you. And I'd probably start out, try doing this clockwise, but why are you here? Why are you in this business that you are in? What's the origin story for this whole Superman series?
Well, the short of it is that when I got into this business, my dad had a traditional insurance brokerage firm and there was no recognizable brand name, no de facto place to go to get insurance, whether it be an insurer or a broker or otherwise. And it was a bit hectic to get insurance. So just, try to solve that problem.
Alex?
I started Burger 28 8 years ago, actually. It was kind of serendipitous because I was living in Africa before, in Nigeria. That's where I moved right after I finished my master's in London. And in Africa, I had tried a bunch of different businesses, but the most lucrative one was importing apples from South Africa. Long story short, when you have a government which is unstable, a currency which can devalue in 6 months by half, running a business we all know is hard enough. So I moved back to Abu Dhabi, which is where I was born. And I was looking for different opportunities. And a friend of mine was supplying meat to a little burger joint in Sharjah. And he's like, you need to go see how much money they're making. I was like, okay. So I drove down and they were making around 15 to 16,000 dirhams a day from a hole in the wall. I said, okay, I mean, I'm not a genius or a physicist, but there could be something here. And why would it not work in Abu Dhabi? So we opened, as I said, 8 years ago. We scaled to around 10 locations at one point. We kind of scaled back a little bit after COVID because a lot of the revenue goes to Talabat and Deliveroo and these aggregators. So my time is not only spent on that. I also have a digital marketing company. And I'm looking at some other businesses as well in the UAE.
I'm an accidental entrepreneur in my field. I was supposed to start up a pet nursery when I found myself feeling like I want to be an entrepreneur. But then, of course, because I had been working in the events industry, my old clients kept on coming to me asking where I went. Right. So I set up the company to cater to one of the largest clients that I had been servicing as an event manager before. Started with that, and then how I got into the talent management is the same. I literally was putting on a product launch for one of my event clients and they requested me to book Chris Fade to host it. So I accidentally met him, serendipity as well. And then I got into talent management as a result of that.
Quite interesting because we started out at LPS as a PR agency and very soon we realized about the fact that the supply is fairly unstructured. For us, it was quite a challenge to sort of structure relationships, trying to get things out because it's a lot of deep networks and people-based networks. But I'd love to start first with something I believe in, which is creative problem solving, right? Early on, I used to always believe that creative problem solving would mean that you're in a creative industry. And that space is fairly saturated. And if you're a creative problem solver, you get in a creative industry, essentially you find a lot of more passionate and creative people. So essentially you're competing with all of them.
Yeah.
But I think the real secret would be, how do you take creative problem solving and get into an industry, perhaps an industry which is not established or a boring industry, and make it work? And that's $1 billion industry, right? Like, would that be something that you agree to? And I'd love to hear about how you've looked at things in a very unconventional way in your spaces, as is at this point of time, to build that disruptive space for each one of you.
100%. Like, if you're in a business where you're competing against extremely passionate people, like in the movie business or in the restaurant business, it's going to be much harder to crack that because you're competing against a lot of irrationality.
Right.
But if you're passionate in a business where everyone else is rational and you're the irrational, crazy one,
Right.
you can actually make progress faster. And actually, what I learned after getting into the insurance business, because I actually wanted to be a creative person, I wanted to be a film director at university. When I got into the insurance business, I realized that you can do creatively fulfilling work even in a boring business, because entrepreneurship in many ways, if you do it in the right way, can be very fulfilling and creatively fulfilling.
True.
Yeah, I'm on board with that 100%.
Absolutely. Alex, would you agree to that?
Most certainly.
Irrational people in the restaurant business, how do you look at that?
I mean, in any single form of entrepreneurship where you need to create something, there is a form of creativity there. And as you quite rightly said, you need to creatively solve problems either in a different way or in a cheaper way, or some sort of edge you're looking for, whether that's relationships with the right people, whether that's being able to have one single place where everybody can come as a single name, or whether it's having a PR agency that knows exactly what this particular market wants. You need to be creative. As you kind of brought up, is that some people think we're creative, some people think we're not creative as an individual. All of us are creative in some way or another. You just can't just silo it into making films or being an artist or something. There's creativity in everything. And why I'm so passionate about content and social media is that I feel that it's such a blank space. There's no rules. And that makes it really beautiful. Like, you have a guy who takes videos of him just writing a story and voiceover. You have somebody else who's jumping out of a building. You have a podcast. It's an open blank canvas and there's no rules. And I think that's really exciting.
Creativity is also, I mean, there's a very fine line between creativity and resilience, right? Like, if you decide that you want to run your own thing, your creativity is going to have to come out, but it might come out in the shape of resilience because you're going to face so many roadblocks, problems. Like, every level you climb up, you're going to make all the mistakes there. Well, at least I have, on this journey.
All of us.
So you have to be creative or you have to be resilient. But the whole point is that if you want to run your own thing, you have to move forward irrespective of what happens. So resilience, creativity, it's pretty much the same coin, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just the same thing, right? Like, changing the rules. People say disrupting, creative.
Finding your way around all the time, like, because we're always going to have things that are just thrown at us, like putting out fires daily. Like, who signs up for that voluntarily?
Exactly.
Or who knows about that, especially in this day and age when social media is glorifying entrepreneurship so much.
Absolutely.
Like, the struggle, I don't mind. I hustle, like, for sure. I work hard, but I think it would be nice if people aim to have a great career as well, because that's not so bad. It's not so bad not having the pressure, not having the full weight of the company on your shoulders, not having all the responsibility. Like, it would be nice if more people glorified actually making a huge career in a company rather than just starting a company. It's been way too glorified, in my opinion.
Right. You need people of all kinds to sort of make that happen.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm kind of testing this hypothesis because I started out as a pure play creative agency, right? Like LPS. And now I'm trying to see if I can get that same problem solving to an extremely conventional established space like an ERP technology implementation. It's a fairly boring space, right?
I know when you said that third thing that you do, I was like, okay.
Exactly. And I want to test this hypothesis, and there's nothing more to it. I want to become an Oracle partner. I want to become a Salesforce partner and see if I can bring exactly what you said about being that irrational person in a very rational industry and heavy terminology being thrown in, but there's so much BS that you can cut through to actually make it happen. But I'd love to sort of get back to personal branding. I think we all mentioned about it at different points. So that's the core of what your sort of larger events, if I'm not wrong, that sort of comes from.
My guys, yeah, for sure.
Correct. And you've got a great personal content creation machine going, which really kind of works. And that's your brand, I mean, in a certain sense. Probably people know Alex and then they say, hey, Burger 28. I mean, that's
Actually, unfortunately, it's the Burger 28 guy. I'm still coined with that. In 4 more years, I'm hoping that I'll be able to remove myself from this label, but let's see.
the lines are such blurred, right? Like, because your personal branding, Burger 28, they just go together. And then I have someone who perhaps doesn't look at personal branding as their core. I mean, they essentially, if I have to even go to the extent, they don't believe in it. But it's more about creating a persona like an Alfred, which is the brand, rather than Avinash, the personal brand in that sense, if I have to say that.
No, I believe in personal brand. I believe in branding in general, but it's context dependent. So in our business, like I did TikTok for a year. We did a lot of content, a lot of viral videos. But it got to a point where it was perhaps silly and not serving me as a CEO. I've obviously got Alfred as a brand mascot who's a person, and I'm branding Alfred every day. But what I found for myself was I'm in a business which isn't probably as exciting as others. And I can go and talk about other businesses, but because I'm an all-in guy, I'm all about building my business 24/7. And there isn't as much necessarily to talk about that is engaging. So even in general, you find not many companies talk about insurance on social media. Right? Because it's not an aspirational product. It's not something you think about. It's a bit of a chore. It's something you postpone. So it's context dependent. I believe I still have a bit of a personal brand, but it's relevant for those that matter.
Right.
I think he's a genius because he has a scalable personal brand like Alfred that he can get to do anything, and he doesn't necessarily have to take his time to do it.
It's a personal brand, just not your personal brand.
Alfred needs a celebrity manager now.
Hey, I'm here. No, but honestly, you've done amazing. I tell you, just a small story. My children are 9, right? Imagine this. I'm at bedtime. I'm just laying next to my kid. She's going to sleep. We chit chat. Then she goes quiet. I go quiet. I'm like, she's going to sleep. Swear. I just hear this little voice. Insurance market. Like your jingle, full out.
Really?
Your branding is exceptional.
Mission
Exceptional.
accomplished.
Yes, for sure. You got it.
Thank you.
Which kind of brings me to the fact that, do you think, especially from a celebrity management point of view,
Yeah.
would there be a future where you'd actually be managing virtual models and virtual personalities?
Oh, what a topic. I don't want to be like the one, oh, it's better before, or like the one, don't listen to Elvis, like, but our current one, like AI, oh, stay away. No, I think AI is amazing. You have to look at the ethics of that, which is probably a big question anyways on social media. You know, should it be more regulated? I believe so. I think social media should be connected with the ID, identification. I think there should be consequences on what you do on social, my opinion. So in that way, I wonder, okay, are we going to have AI to have celebrities, etc.? I'm sure it will pop up, and a lot of people are saying it's the next thing. Question is, how do you do that ethically without tricking people? Mental health, we have to also consider, but then that should be applied to real people as well, right? So I don't know. I mean, it's not as if I'm chasing it. Like I'm pretty good with the uniqueness of a real person. I think that's fun. I like talking with people in real. I like going to events with people that are real. I'm not excluding it, but I'm not saying that's something I would be like, oh yeah, 100% in. No.
Got it. In the coming time, celebrities in itself are sort of changing, right? Because the landscape is changing. The media landscape is changing. What do you think would be the future of celebrities in the Middle East? Because there are also multiple cities which are sort of springing up in terms of mainstream culture.
I think there are different segments, like, I mean, you can be TikTok famous and you can be real life famous. You can be business industry famous. You can be famous in society without having an online profile. I mean, you can be a brand that's used by millions of people, but maybe you have 25,000 followers because, to be quite frank, you don't need social media anymore. I mean, I think there's so many different layers of celebrities, and I think that's going to continue evolving as we go because we spend more time online than before, and the nature is changing. Before we used to watch TV, now we watch Netflix predominantly, but then that's also culture specific and country specific, right? I think it's a very organic thing that moves constantly. It's really hard to predict what's going to happen. I think it's going to stay layered, very, very layered, I think. And then people will dip in and out. There's a lot of real life celebs that easily transcend over into the online space, that can monetize it, that have huge impact, and vice versa. There are some online famous that have managed to become like, hey, you are recognized in the street, not only by your fans. Not trying to minimize being TikTok famous. It's an amazing achievement. Yeah, I think it's going to continue evolving, but I think it's a very interesting space. I think it's changed a lot for people. You have an online connection. You have something to say. You can monetize it.
So democratized right now.
Incredibly,
yeah.
incredibly. And the more platforms are coming to actually monetize instead of brand deals, but based on views and what you're putting out there, what will that do to countries where you might not have the resources to become an entrepreneur? Like, okay, so now you can do online. You can actually do certain actions online to get money. I find this very interesting.
True,
Very,
100%,
very interesting.
100%. But would it be right to say that like there's one level which people call it influencers, and then there are celebrities, right? Like, is this the same thing? Fairly different things, and
I think they're still very different things.
very different things. And
Yeah.
how would you say that?
Because it's one thing to have a reach online, which is an amazing achievement, but you see a big difference if that's someone who you put them in the airport or in the mall, in a restaurant. Do they get approached? There's a big difference between that and the impact online. Sometimes the impact online is massive, right? But it's distributed across globally. So it's not to say that you will be recognized when you're walking around. I could have someone that has maybe 20 million followers on TikTok, but just because I'm not interested in her content, I don't know who she is. I'm more likely maybe to know about an actor or actress because they've been in cinema and that's still somehow on my radar, you know? Yeah, so I think they're still different, but they merge
Correct.
sometimes.
Correct. Would I be right in saying that somewhere real life influence kind of at this point of time is still far more significant, at least from your perspective of managing them and sort of
I
bringing...
think credibility, and I think for you as well as clients, you're on the other side of what I do, right? I think credibility matters, right? The impact someone has is not only measured in numbers if you're looking at online. It's also like what kind of credibility, the halo effect of being affiliated with this person.
Right.
How are they looked upon in the society as well? Not only, if you just wanted numbers, you can just run dark ads, right?
Correct. Correct.
Circling back kind of to when you were creating content and it got to a point where you felt you were creating silly content just to get views. This is the problem with the algorithm, is that if you are too obsessed with numbers and you're too obsessed with that, it will force you to do silly things or things which spark controversy, because that's how the algorithm works. That's how human beings are.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I want to be associated with you. It doesn't mean that I want to buy the t-shirt you're wearing, because I don't actually look up to you. You're a form of 5-second entertainment for me. But I'm not sitting there engaging, thinking, wow, this guy looks really cool. I like his values. I love his branding and whatnot. And then therefore would maybe want to buy something that he's promoting.
So would you say that's the difference between influencer and celebrity?
I think the celebrity didn't start online. There's a few, like there's the guy who was big on TikTok. I forgot his name, Kabi or
Habib.
whatever, where he, yeah.
Habib Lam,
Yeah,
yeah.
Like
but
they
he's
were
still
first mover
TikTok.
advantages. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's only TikTok. Like he wasn't able, as you said, some people are able to transcend into real life.
Then we actually see these celebrities like Cristiano Ronaldo recently came into social media massively, got into 1 billion follower club fairly quickly. How do you see this reverse phenomena? I mean, clearly there is a revenue angle to it.
I think it points to that question, you know, the difference between celebrity and influencer.
Right.
Backwards, it's working. There are so many examples. But do we see influencers become movie stars or be a part of pop culture, right? So that's the leap that we need to see.
It's easier for singers, artists, of course, they have a platform and it's easier for them to create a stronger trajectory rather than before when you had to know someone. Like you still have to work really hard, of course, but I think it's leveled out the playing field a little bit. But for everyone, even for business people, you want to get yourself into media, you can work hard on your social media. It creates opportunity.
It goes back to your point, right? What are you amplifying? Do you
Yeah.
have substance to amplify?
Exactly. And that's why for anyone who has something to say or they have their niche or they have their business, I don't see any downside. Me creating content and 15,000 people or 100,000 people seeing my face today, unless I'm not being racist, I'm not picking on anybody. Like I'm just being me talking about something. I don't see any downside as long as it aligns with my personal brand.
I think the future of content, especially from creators who have something to say, would be these highly niche spaces. Like imagine people doing a podcast on fishing, right? Like you would find people at different corners of the world.
There's
actually.
a guy on YouTube,
Right.
all he does is fish
There you
with
go.
his 2 sons. And like you watch, you're like,
There's a massive industry fishing.
it's huge. Yeah, I know, but it's,
Like massive,
it's so
so-
niche. Like he
Yeah.
just, you know, it's fishing in like a certain lake with his 2
Yeah.
sons.
Right.
There's people who clean lighters. Have you seen
Yeah.
that? They take a dirty lighter and then they clean it and re-put it all back together.
All these hacks and how you do it.
Satisfying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With ASMR sounds playing behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how these extremely niche spaces could sort of flourish.
Another layer to this is what people have to recognize at some point is that social media is like a new currency.
Right. True.
You can have any which view you want, but it's a solid career path. And even as a person that don't have a lot of followers, if you have engagement and the way that the platforms are evolving now, you can monetize it. You can offset costs that you would normally have. You can achieve a point where you get staycations for free. Even if you're not having it as a career, it is becoming a currency.
It's value. I mean, what is currency? Currency is an exchange of value.
Absolutely. It's sort of that Amex privilege card that you have in a certain sense, right? Like you get these benefits unlocked at its least.
Yeah.
At its maximum, as you rightly said, it's a career.
When it's becoming more mainstream knowledge, like what's going to happen with the platforms and how they're evolving is really interesting for everyone, not only creators.
Very interesting startups now in the space. I mean, I've seen a recent one, Social Cash. Very interesting space where you can actually monetize on your social media following. There's a Black Mirror episode on it. If anyone's looked at the Black Mirror episode, the episode where actually your social currency determines whether you get into a flight or not.
Yes,
Crazy.
I did see that.
It's very crazy.
Yes. I mean, they have that in China almost.
There. Yeah,
It's already
exactly. I'm talking about how this defines culture. I mean, I'd love to sort of talk to Avinash about how do you see marketing from a business standpoint? I'm sure all of us would agree the amount of reach that, let's say, insurance market has in terms of the surroundings that we live in it's amazing, the kind of work and the kind of reach that you've been able to build. Do you see investments in marketing as a long-term investment? Or do you see it as a part of your unit economics and it needs to make sense operationally?
You know, someone was telling me recently that there's no such thing as a good business or a bad business. There's just good marketing and bad marketing. And I completely agree with that, because when you're taught marketing at university, it's product, price, promotion, place. So my question always was, what's left? Marketing and business are actually interchangeable. They're inseparable. They mean the same thing. For me, marketing is not just advertising, but it's, you know, building a brand and living up to the brand's promise in everything that you do in a business. And then if you're able to do that, you can continue growing and you can amplify your message. Now, in our case, we had to amplify it through advertising and, you know, above the line media.
Correct.
Because for the reasons we spoke about, I couldn't get traction on social media, frankly. And it might be product or, you know, maybe execution. So we've not given up.
You just need us.
You know,
We'll
we
talk
need
after
you.
this. We'll talk after this.
The advertising bit is, though, the most visible part. I think building the business and the brand, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that has gone into it in order to get to this point.
What do you see as the return on these investments? Of course, it's visible, it's out there, we all know about it. But how does that sort of trickle down when it comes to actual business top line and bottom line? And if there's anything that you see as, hey, this is working.
Yeah, I mean, we're still here, right? So it has to work. But, you know, when you think exponentially, the returns are infinite. So that's how we think about it, right? So it's just compounding every year. We're bootstrapped, so we didn't raise any capital. So as long as the numbers are working, it's working.
Right.
You can try to grill down granularly and try to over-optimize it. But at the end of the day, I've found that that doesn't work. That same gut feeling that you had in making all of the decisions that you made as a founder need to be there. And that's the beauty of being a founder-led business, because it's your biological baby. And so you can use that to, you know, continue to drive the business from your gut. And that's just far more agile than trying to run it through committees and metrics and things like that.
Well said.
Yeah, it's the
Really
Brian
well said.
Chesky model of
Exactly.
Airbnb.
I stole his line.
Yeah, the founder mode and how you toggle in the founder mode. to make
I'm
things
so
happen.
glad he said that, because people have popularized, you know, not micromanaging. As a business grows, your job is just strategy. And he realized that how that, like, you know, blew up in his face. And so he actually has taken the other side of it and has said, I'm going to continue driving this business, and I can drive this business, and I can be involved in it. And the business has to respond to, you know, my capacity, because I'm the biological parent of this business. And it's just 100% true. I couldn't agree more.
Amazing. And I think I spoke to Ibrahim some time ago from Dubai Bling. Amazing guy and extremely sharp mind when it comes to F&B businesses. And he's talking about how post the Dubai Bling Netflix show, the popularity of his F&B business really rose. I mean, that was the biggest tangible outcome for him. Did you see that from a point of when you started running your sort of social media channel, and was there that sort of a return that you saw like tangibly coming from it?
I mean, I built Burger 28 on cheap Facebook ads. When we opened 8 years ago, there's no way you could advertise on a billboard. There's no way that you could be in a newspaper if you're a bootstrap startup. It's impossible. So you had to be creative to look at other ways. Happily, at the same time, social media was growing. So obviously we benefited from that. At one point we were spending, I mean, as two branches with not a huge amount of revenue, we were spending like 100K on Facebook ads when they're really cheap and seeing an ROI on that for sure. Now, building my personal brand, did it impact? I'm sure it does. It's very difficult to measure. I mean, obviously the gentleman, Ibrahim, for example, I mean, he's on a huge, massive scale. You know what I mean? How many eyes are watching that content and watching that? So I'm sure it will have a positive impact. Like I reiterated before, I don't see anything negative in creating good content. Well, content that's real to me so I can keep doing it. So I don't fall down the line of doing something which isn't honest to myself or honest to my values. And you see where it takes you.
Right.
I look at everything in seasons. Like it takes around 5 years to build something meaningful. It takes 5 years to see whether you have a meaningful business, 5 years to know whether you really get along, 5 years to have a friend who you know you can trust. So I look at it like that. And I've been creating my own content now for a year and a half. So I have no expectation. I'm not expecting revenue. I'm not expecting brand deals. But I wouldn't necessarily be sitting here if I didn't create content a year ago.
That's true.
I've also been on other experiences where also I wouldn't have the leverage. I wouldn't have the clout. I wouldn't have the value unless I put this effort in twice a week to create 30 videos a month.
Right.
So I just don't see any downsides.
Right. From an industry which is fairly based on networks, right? Like, and at the end of the day, other business stakeholders or probably other celebrities. How does, let's say, a curveball events build its equity among circles which could perhaps be guarded to a certain extent?
First of all, we are easy to deal with. There's no douchiness. Of course, we have boundaries as well on what we can and cannot do, but we are easy to work with. And both me as well as the team, we follow a very simple rule, which is we work with projects, right? So it's about a person or a company signing off on a budget, a marketing budget. In the end, that's a person. It's this person's job on the line. Our job is to make sure that he or she looks good in front of her boss.
Right.
That they can say, yo, this worked, I did good, everything worked out well. This is our priority. And with that mindset, when you break it down, it's not about the money, it's about, is this person going to be happy afterwards? Are they going to look good in front of their management? Are they going to come back? Are they going to recommend us to others? Are they going to listen when I upsell and suggest something else, which is for the good of their company? That's when things really click. You know, we are all about relationships. We're very careful in how we work in terms of taking on projects. We don't screw people over. We say no to projects as well. I can tell them if someone's like, okay, I want to do 6 reels across this. I say like, that's lovely, but I don't need to take all that money from you. I think it's going to be excessive. Let's only do 2. And vice versa. If someone is like, okay, I want to do this, I'll be maybe honest with them, say it's not going to have the impact that you want. You need to remind people, how about, can you manage to get budget to, so we do 3 of them? Or this and this. We work in a very authentic way and we're likable, which I think means people deal with people, right?
If you're talking about the sort of the brand side of the organizations
and that's of course only in how we do our specific job. Then on top of that, we have the magic ingredient. We have phenomenal talent.
Right.
It's not just us selling stuff and then subpar results.
Correct.
No, we're selling things and the result is up here.
Right.
So
talent plays a huge role in that.
Massive. And the same way, a talent without good management is going to be restricted, right?
Correct.
But a good management without good talent is going to have the same problem.
Absolutely.
So when you're on the same level, I mean, we work with incredible people. Incredible.
It's so important to mention that good talent without good management is really not that good talent. Because we used to work with influencers a lot with Burger 28, and some of them are extremely efficient with a good manager, and some of them are just all over the place. And when you're spending quite a large sum of money and someone isn't organized and like they're all over the place, they're not coming on time, they're not answering you, you're just like, okay, I'm paying like 30, 40K. I'm sure you deal with higher numbers than that. I expect something, you know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm expecting hopefully a return, but at least like answer my WhatsApp or like something. Or I'm sitting there in the restaurant, like, where's this person, you know?
Yeah.
That's one thing. Another thing I loved what you said is making their boss happy. That's such an interesting way to look at how to service.
You're welcome, guys.
I really like that.
Getting that crux of talents, right? That's the real sort of the starting point, but getting those talents. How do you see that, Karin? Do you actually get talents that you instinctively believe will go the next level and then you actually nurture them? Because that's an investment you make, right? Or you actually go after talents who already are like getting up.
Again, here, this is industry specific, so I'm not sure how interesting it is for you guys, but as management, we look after the interest of the talent, right? Then there's agencies also.
Right.
So agencies, typically, they cater to the clients. So the agency will go to a brand and their objective is to lock in a massive budget and to provide 15, 20 influencers, right? That's agency. They aggressively pursue work, right? And then they have overheads on the talents. As management, you have an agreement with the talent and you have a percentage. So when they make money, I make money. I build their wealth. At the same time, I build mine, right? So when you have that, it's a very fine line. Agencies work very differently than we
Correct,
do.
absolutely. It's more, for us, it's more about bundling all of the different talent services, trying to give it to the client as a solution that they're looking for.
So we work in a very different way than agencies.
But it's also, it takes time to kind of blossom a talent. I mean, that's the right word to sort of
that's why we take on talents that are busy. Like, I'm not really useful for someone who's starting out. I'll tell you, it's not because I won't
That's
be
an
able...
interesting insight.
I'm not. There are other agencies. You're better off going with an agency that focuses on clients because there will be spillover. They might have many talents that are on board with them, but there will be spillover, and they're fantastic at securing clients. For me, what we work on is making the life easier for the talent. So we are useful when you are having so many inquiries that you can no longer keep up. You don't know who paid, where's the invoice, do I have to pay VAT? Like that, we come in and we take over, So we make sense when it's someone really busy.
Right.
Then we
like
come
a support
in,
system to them.
a massive support system, right? And when you get to a certain level as well, the amount of inquiries and interest, it doesn't mean to say that all of them are going to be a solid project for you, right? Or achievable even, considering your budgets and so on. So there's a massive workload that you have to take on. So at some point you need like a team. You're not going to need only one person. So for us, our expertise, it's to nurture relationships. Well, today I was late, so I'm not going to say I'm always on time. But that's the whole point, I was still late though. But the point is that I would never want a client to feel this way because they should actually like me almost as much as they love the talent. The team and they should be like, yo, I know Karin will fix this. I know Karin's team can sort this out. I know they'll be on time. I know they will understand what I need. This is the thing. So our management is a bit different. I wouldn't be useful for a totally new talent.
Correct.
They're better off taking someone on a retainer, that can help them grow and is paid to aggressively seek out.
Correct.
But also, if you are talent, you want to focus on what you're good at.
Yes.
Like your singular focus, all you care about is insurance markets. Like I live, breathe that.
With the WhatsApp icons that Avinash has, also as Alfred. I mean, that's how focused
can
he's
see
on
that,
the brand.
even in this room. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's amazing, man.
That's
You're
amazing.
completely indulged 100% in one mission. I respect that hugely.
It's a privilege to have something that you love because then you're not working a day in your life.
I agree.
And
True.
so it's so great. I think we all clearly love what we do.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky. And we should have,
yes.
there's a lot of
Alhamdulillah.
gratitude
Alhamdulillah.
on that, right? It's really special to find that. Not everyone finds that.
No.
We work with few insurance companies. I know one of the largest ones here in the region right now. We always get notes on, look at how insurance market is doing things. Look at how insurance market is doing things. How do you see the space in that sense? Because everyone's trying to catch up, right? Even insurance companies whose products you aggregate are also looking to build digital products. The margins sort of get challenging at times. How does the bottom line sort of work? Revenue realization. I think that's something that I think people would love to know about, how revenue realization happens in a space where aggregation, there is people who are behind and there's aggregation taking place in a space which is so competitive and really the moats are few, in a space which looks unstructured from outside. So I'd love to hear each one's thoughts on revenue and bottom line and how does that sort of work out? Some sort of actionable thoughts on it.
For us, we are all about value proposition. And thankfully, we're in the greatest city and country in the world, which provides a phenomenal environment for growth of any business. Insurance is a major part of the economy's GDP, but the penetration of insurance as part of the GDP is growing. It's not so much about taking credit for what we're doing, but we have tailwinds,
Right.
which is fantastic. And it's about how you allow that value or attract that value towards you. But the value is there in the environment that we're in. We focus on value proposition. So what can we do day in, day out to make sure the customers are getting what they want? In particular, or especially at the time of a claim. And so a lot of our Google reviews that we keep talking about are actually about the claim service we provide. Because then the customers feel compelled to go and write a review. Because here we're not earning anything, you're not paying us anything, but we're making sure that you're well taken care of at the time of a claim, regardless of which product you bought from us. And we make sure we curate products and insurers based on those that we believe will deliver at the time of a claim. So we really focus on value proposition. We really focus on building the brand. From there, from a more corporate strategy perspective, I think we've learned a lot of lessons in aggregating insurance, which might be relevant to other industries.
Right.
And we believe the brand equity we've built could be relevant to other B2C industries. So watch this space.
Right. Right. If I read that correctly, what you're saying is people really don't see through a claim when they're deciding on an insurance, at least tangibly. So Google reviews kind of becomes the tangible mnemonic of claims, and the brand is big. And as a result, people are ready to pay. They're not so cost sensitive, and they're ready to pay a lot more on an insurance, which they would probably take from insurance market. So insurance market can actually add that premium because of brand and the Google reviews.
Yeah, the only reason to build a brand is so that you can charge a premium price.
Correct.
And that's your moat. Because otherwise you'll play the price game and run your business into the ground. But that doesn't mean you're charging a premium price to make more money or anything like that. You're charging a premium price because you're giving more than that even in value.
Right.
And so that's what we've always focused on. So none of our marketing is about being the cheapest or, we'll give you discounts.
Yeah.
We're not saying we're expensive.
Right.
Otherwise we wouldn't have the kind of market share that we do.
You're value driven.
But we're value driven, and we don't play the price war.
Got it.
And that allows us to be able to invest in all of these things that we invest in.
Nice. What about you, Alex? I was reading this book with Peter Thiel, and he did mention about starting out in the restaurant business. It looks great for people who are extremely passionate, but from inside, the margins are fairly maxed out sometimes, and then there's operational requirements from people running. How do you see this business, and where do you see it going? Do you see more vertical expansion within restaurants, or beyond that?
When we first started Burger 28, our EBITDA margin was like 38 to 45, depending on how you could control your food cost. When 70 or 80% of your revenue now goes on aggregators, they take 35%. So you do the math on what the EBITDA looks like.
Right.
When you're running a business on an EBITDA of 8 to 12 or 8 to 13%, margins become extremely tight. And it becomes extremely difficult, definitely, especially when your food cost is around 30%, because in QSR you have packaging,
correct,
which can be 2 or 3%.
Right.
Where I see a bigger opportunity for F&B is in like all-day dining restaurants, cafes, stuff like that, where people go and hang out and spend, and you don't have this gatekeeper of Talabat and Deliveroo and these aggregators who are taking such a high margin from you. So it is definitely difficult. One thing that I learned the hard way is controlling your costs. Like, you need to control your costs. It's easy when things are going really well and and you have tailwinds and the business is growing, that you start to edge up your costs slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly. But prices and demand is cyclical. Like, you don't know when another COVID could happen, or you could have a black swan event, or something could change in your industry. But any cost saving you have is permanent. You just need to be extremely efficient to the point of insanity to make sure that you have the largest EBITDA margin you can, without compromising value, without compromising the right people. But you should constantly be looking. Like,
that's the only way to sustain in business, right? One of the CEOs has this line, one of the CEOs of an insurance company, actually. I wouldn't go as far as that, but his line is, expenses like your nails should be cut every week.
Yeah. And I think...
And he says that all the time. But he says he says it a bit too frequently. I think it might demotivate his employees a little bit. But he truly implements that discipline in his business.
I mean, in your social life, there's this like feeling of being, you give, you pay the bill when you're with your friends, or like you offer things. But bringing that mentality into business can be a bit dangerous, I think, if you're not on top of your costs.
I guess it depends on what you want to achieve as well. Like,
True.
I also, similar to you, like I'm value driven, and especially in the talents, obviously 100% they deliver on what they do. But I also have the event management portion of my company, right? Which I don't advertise a lot of, because I work with long-term clients. So my goal is not to acquire a new client necessarily. I just want more business from the existing ones. But always like under promise, over deliver. For the longest time, I had maximum profit margins that my team, they weren't allowed to exceed it. If they managed to exceed it, I would base the commission on it happily. But the remaining percentage, they would have to spend it on stuff that the client didn't want to make the event better. And this is how I kept it long term,
Right.
But I think to that point, it really depends on what you want to achieve, right? Maybe some people will live a happy life having that kind of mindset, but I don't know about you, but I don't want to create a unicorn.
Right.
I want to have a flexible life. I want to make money. I want to love my team. I want to have a fun day in the office. I want to have people that I can laugh with when I'm under pressure and stress. Like, I have a different vision. So I'd rather spend. Of course, I'm watching my margins and bottom lines and so on, but it's also about like my time in the office, the flexibility it gives, and what that experience is for me and my team members.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, it
Like I
does.
need my work. It's a huge part of my life. I want to have fun during. I want to feel like invigorated, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think all the things that you've said kind of come together in a balance, right? Like you could get into an extremely competitive industry, dive right into competition and be absolutely ruthless. But what does that really result, right? Like that's something that you need to think of. But at the same time, all of you guys are actually building, in a certain sense, blue ocean spaces within industries. You're building something in insurance space with a brand, right? Like how many of them actually can claim to do that, right? You're building something which is very different from, let's say, like a global burger chain, right? Like how do you sort of do that? Same thing with you. You've got a moat of talents. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow, like you've got certain talents which could eventually is your branding.
And it can vary, by the way, like what you're creating, for instance, I would measure the success then in the money, of course, like scalability and how much of the market share you're taking, dominating the market in this case, right? Let's be less humble. But maybe from my current business,
Right.
my goal is longevity and having fun all day and being on that sweet balance where we still make money, but
Right.
like it's about having fun also. Whereas in my other business, my goal is more monetary. It depends also. It's not to say that one person will have the same goal for each company, right? Maybe you're looking at keeping yours forever. It's your baby. Or maybe you're looking at selling it. As a company owner, you reach a point where you can have different objectives with different businesses. You know, some you want to be involved in, others you don't want to be involved in, some you want to sell, right?
Absolutely.
There's also no right or wrong answer. Like
No, it's
everybody
not.
builds their own destiny
Yeah.
in their own
Absolutely.
business, and
And sometimes
100%.
I think as founders, I mean, we're sometimes not even, I mean, personally, I probably speak from personal experience. Perhaps I don't even see myself sometimes capable of managing expenses in my company. I mean, I probably wouldn't, I actually have recruited people who do that for me.
Of
And
course.
not even from an accounting point of view, but even from, let's say, business operation heads.
To
who
control
actually
you.
control me. Because I would probably, I'm sure all of us would sort of, Gary Vee's famous sort of thing about everyone tells you to focus on one thing, but it's just sort of inbuilt in all of us to think about three things at the same time and try to do all of them and then come back home and regret and try to do one thing. Right? So all of us are exactly cut from that same cloth. But it's important to know at some point of time about the fact that your runway may be limited if you do not have that, right? Like you need to sort of build on that bottom line.
You need to burn your fingers because there's a limit, right?
Let's be honest, entrepreneurship is not easy.
No.
And especially in the early days,
bipolar.
it is intense, it's brutal, you get punched in the face all the time. Then you succeed a little bit. But success is a lousy teacher. You learn from failure and you learn from the hard times. And that's where, I learned how to cut expenses.
Yeah.
Not when the business was growing 40%, but during COVID when car insurance prices fell 50%.
Yeah.
Now you're pushed against a corner, it's not fun, but you have to do it. And that's how you learn how to do it. And that's how you learn the value of building a business that has sound fundamentals, not when times are good. So I think that's the reality of entrepreneurship. Like we all get at some point or the other into a crisis situation, and hopefully we're cut from the cloth that we take that positively and learn from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to touch upon Saudi as a interesting topic, right? Interesting cities being built. Everyone's looking at it as the Saudi gold rush. Everyone's out there trying to grow and find ways of growing. How do each one of us sort of look at that? I'd love to understand in your respective spaces, do you see that as interesting opportunity, and how do you see pursuing it in your own ways?
Yeah, I get asked like 2 to 3 times a week that are you going to Saudi? Are you going to Saudi? But I think I would classify the Saudi conversation into 2 groups of people. One group, and usually this is the bigger group that asks this question in terms of whether you're going to Saudi, is those that haven't been to Saudi or don't have a business in
Right.
Saudi themselves.
Right.
And then it's that clear, superficial proposition of gold rush and
Correct.
the next
Correct.
Dubai and so on. And then there are the people who have actually gone to Saudi and have been trying to build a business in Saudi.
True.
And you get a much more nuanced picture there.
Right.
And it's not always
It's not black and white.
sunshine and roses.
Correct.
There are challenges. It's not a copy paste of. It's not Dubai 20 years ago. And so you've got to be willing to learn and build ground up, and you got to appreciate that it's different from what we've seen here. And if you have that, and then all of the other stuff in business that's important, like long-term thinking and, sound fundamentals and all of that, then maybe you have a chance. But it's a very nuanced conversation
Correct.
there.
And especially in industries like insurance, which has regulation to play a
Exactly.
huge role. In UAE, it's far more ahead in terms of implementing those regulations, and the penetration is fairly on the favorable side compared to, let's say, Saudi, which is going to sort of see that in the next 8 to 10
Yeah,
years.
but
That's a long
interestingly,
game.
like Saudi has always been a much more sophisticated market
Right.
from a regulation
Is it
perspective.
in terms of
And
insurance?
in fact, yes, and it has
Wow.
been a reference for not just the UAE, but a lot of the Gulf countries and even
Right.
more broadly the Middle East.
Interesting.
And they have been ahead of the curve there.
Right.
So there's a lot of nuances which are contradictory
Very
when
interesting.
you look at Saudi.
Do you see Alfred being there in Saudi soon? How does that happen?
Inshallah, yeah. But we want to do it right.
Right.
We want to do it right.
But you're thinking about
it. It's a thought, yes.
Right.
But if we do it, we want to do it right.
But you, Alex?
I think a lot of people assume that the Saudi market and the consumer in Saudi is exactly the same as the Emirati market. Therefore, you can just copy and paste whatever strategy worked here, there, and that's a mistake.
Right.
And a lot of people in my industry have done that and they've failed. So I think you need to have the right fundamentals. You need to build the business from the bottom up. You need to analyze the market properly. You definitely need to go there before you start saying that it's a gold rush, unless you work for Deloitte, because it is a gold rush.
Yeah.
Really a good.
That's the only exception.
That's the one exception. So yeah, no, don't think that any market is similar to another market. You're going to have to build on solid fundamentals. You're going to have to start from the bottom up. You need to reassess your marketing strategy. What worked for you the past 5 years here maybe will not work again in the future 5 years. So I think it's a very big mistake. One thing that I experienced at a very young age is I left London after my master's and moved to Nigeria for 4 years. So I know that gold rush feeling. I know that like part of the world which people are always like, oh, you can make $1 million there, or you can make a lot of money there, or whatever. Not to say that you can't make money, but I've experienced that and I'm quite happy here in the UAE where I understand it. I think I understand the consumer. I understand the laws. I have my network. And I think that spending 5 years focused here will bring me way more value than trying to be in multiple different geographic locations at the same time. That's just how I personally feel. Is there an opportunity there? Without a doubt. Is it the right opportunity for me right now? No, I don't think so. Not unless I had the right people with me.
I remember working for a building material company like 12 years ago, and one of the biggest industries that they had for cladding and all of these building material stuff was McDonald's and Herfies. They built these massive stores. At Saudi, they have these massive McDonald's stores which look like malls in themselves. And you'll be always thinking about how many people would this place actually have on full capacity. It's just massive everywhere, even on, let's say, outposts and roads and just this massive stores. Rather than, like, unlike here in UAE, where you've got these petrol station associated little spaces of drive-ins, they will actually have people. So food is a hugely interesting space, I think.
It's a massive space, massive opportunity. There's a lot of people who went earlier, like 4 or 5 years ago, who did very, very well.
Yeah.
But as soon as everyone's rushing towards something, you need to be looking at what's the next rush. That's how I think. Right. That works in equity markets, that works in businesses where you open. Like when there's too many people and it's crowded, that's generally not where the opportunity is.
From a point of looking at the cultural phenomena that Saudi, you've got now Riyadh's doing its own fashion week. You've also got celebrities coming from different parts of the world who decide to live in Saudi. I mean, so how do you see that? Do you see a potential from a business point of view there?
Of course. Whether I want to be part of it or not, that's a different story, right? Again, I think Saudi is a huge market, amazing, especially for my field. There's plenty of my colleagues in the industry, both in talent and events management, that are already over there crushing it with everything they've learned here and then applying it to there, right? There's a lot of people as well who tried and failed. In my case, we do work with Saudi quite a bit. Like we have clients everywhere in the world, right? So we are already global. Now, the majority of the work that we do is here, of course. But would I go there and set up? Not at this point in my life. I have young kids. I have other priorities. Although my life might look hectic from my curated social media, the majority of my time I spend with my kids. And I'm on a slow burn in terms of my company. Like, in my opinion, I don't believe I'm on full speed, not even close to full speed right now. So no, I wouldn't go to Saudi now, but that's because of personal circumstances and other priorities, if that makes sense. Otherwise, it would be amazing, I think.
So I think that was interesting. I mean, we probably always think about business as a means to get things, and sometimes sort of forget about the balance that you need to create back in life. I'd love to touch upon and understand from all of you and talk about your relationship to risk. And I'll tell you where I come from, because each one of you kind of belongs in that 1% of successful people in terms of the function of age and the revenue. Like, average age of a millionaire would be 42, 43, or different studies, but definitely 40 plus. And how do you guys look at risk, and what's the relationship of risk?
I mean, in my journey, we took a lot of massive risks. All of this advertising that we used to buy, the kind of deals we used to strike, and we still do. And I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I'll speak for myself. I'm the kind of entrepreneur that thrives on risk. If I'm not making big, bold bets, I kind of get bored. I've always been that way, which is why I love what I do. Taking massive risks is extremely important if you want to build a massive business.
Yeah, I'd really like all of us, let's get specific to those times in your life where you thought you took it a little too far.
The majority of our younger years.
Exactly.
Of course.
Exactly. And sort of talk about how that kind of did pay back or didn't pay back as you go on, and some interesting validated.
Well, there's a present scenario.
Right.
Last week, we announced that we have rebranded a metro station. And so now there is a metro station named Insurance Market. That's, again, a long-term commitment. It's what one would or could describe as a massive risk. But it's something that I've always done in the business, which is when opportunities knock, I'm not scared to take a look at them and have a chat about them. And sometimes things work out. And this is a great honor. It's a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
We're honored that the Dubai government looks at us as a great brand that they would like to have on the map of Dubai. It's a very proud moment for us and a big monumental achievement for the team.
How did the thought come along? Was that something of a aspirational thing, say, at one point of time, some time back, where you said, hey, I wanted metro station?
I'm not sure, but I think you do end up, I believe in manifestation. And I'm sure at some point I would have put that thought out there. But it wasn't like an aspiration or something we were working towards. But it just literally came and fell in our lap, to be honest. It was such an easy process. It feels like it would be something like it's like a big deal. But it was the smoothest process. Just like the stars aligned and we were ready, they were ready, and we could make it happen.
Right. And phenomenal achievement, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
What do you guys think in terms of risk and different points of time in your life where you thought this sort of went close to recklessness?
Without risk, you don't get reward. Anyone who's built something incredible, something huge, has had to take a boatload of risk and learned how to manage that and manage their emotions in taking the risk. When you're younger, it's much easier. When you're not married and you don't have kids, it's easier to live a life which has full of risk, and you don't have to mitigate the risks all the time. So I think for younger people watching this in your 20s, try as many things as you can and have as many risk experiences and take those chances, take those shots, because as you get older, it kind of becomes a bit more difficult. You have more people who are depending on you. You also have less time to correct any risk that goes wrong, because not every risk is going to go right. So
And you have more to lose.
Exactly. You have way more to lose as well. So I think that's important. For me, I've definitely a risk taker, but as I've gotten a bit older, I've become a bit more risk adverse, to be honest, in general. Like, I'm more interested in thinking about how I can build profitable income streams and then invest it more in safer assets than consistently just going at really high risk, like starting new businesses and things like that.
When you started out, what would risk look like for you? Would it have been like opening multiple stores? Would it be starting out on different...
Well, I mean, the first store we opened was in like an obscure suburb of Abu Dhabi,
right,
called Mohammed bin Zayed City. So that was definitely a risk. There was nothing there, but I knew that a lot of the Emiratis were building houses there because they had been given land by the government. So they were leaving Abu Dhabi Island and moving to Mohammed bin Zayed. And we were the first restaurant there. I think in the second month, we did like 170K EBITDA dirhams.
Wow.
From a tiny little burger joint. Like,
yeah, that's
I
massive.
had no idea
Correct.
how to do burgers.
That's
like,
vindication.
Yeah, like I was like, dude, if I do this for the next 10 years, I'm going to be worth $1 billion. This is crazy.
So you like profitable from the second month?
Month 2, yeah.
Wow.
Spoiled,
crazy.
to be honest.
Is that the case of F&B businesses?
No.
No?
No.
Not at all?
I don't think so.
It's not.
That's like top 0.001%.
Yes, and I was like 28 years old. And I'm like, dude, this is easy. Like, what's everybody talking about?
Famous
this being,
last words.
Famous last words, exactly. Definitely took risks, and they paid off. And then I've taken other big risks when I got... You have to control your hubris. Like, you have to control your ego in a way, because sometimes when things are going really well, you start to take a bigger risk, and you can lose it all.
Right.
You know, that is possible. So don't get clouded by that. And I've taken some risks which haven't paid off, and I regret them primarily coming out of COVID. We had a year or 2 years of really, really good revenue and really good profitability. I wish I had controlled my costs better, to be honest, what to do. And I opened certain locations which were in the wrong places and they were too big. And the reason why I opened them and they were so big was because I wanted to prove to other people, I guess, that like I had made it. You know what I mean? So I wanted a bigger store when there was no need. I could have made the same amount of revenue and had the same value for the customer with 1/3 the size. So as you get older and you burn your hands, you take less and less risks, I would say, or they're more calculated.
People probably misjudge how important it is with reconciliation years as well. To like, because we want to move always, right? We want to progress and grow, right? It's in our DNA, I think, or in our blood rather. But to take a year and just like, okay, no, we're just gonna cash up right now.
Right.
Like we're not gonna do any grand moves. We're not gonna expand too much. We're not gonna change our office. We're not gonna upgrade. We're not gonna hire more people unless they are value adding. Like if you control yourself and have reconciliation years, like it's really beneficial for a business.
Agreed.
Really beneficial.
But that's super mature and like a mature way of looking at a business. And
where mentors come in, right?
Yeah.
As well. I didn't know about reconciliation years until I had mentors coming in that were further ahead in the journey that were like, yo, I just sold my business 10 years in.
Right.
Can we do a coffee? Like, you know, this is massive as
Absolutely.
well.
And also what I couldn't recommend more is a great CFO. Not someone who kind of runs your finance and accounts and stuff, but a true strategic partner CFO.
Ruins the
Even a
party.
fractional one. If you can't afford a full-time, get a fractional CFO, but a like really, really good one. I agree with you 100%. Can change everything for you.
You can actually manage to take more risk, interestingly, because you'll be forced to calculate everything. If you get the right kind of CEO who can jam with you in terms of how an investment could pan out and what's the worst case scenario, what I found is that after having Amit on board, who's our CFO, we've been actually able to grow more and make better decisions and actually take more risk.
Right.
But it's far more calculated now.
I want to touch upon what you mentioned, Karin, about mentors. When you start out fairly early, is it a natural instinct to look for mentors who've kind of done that? If there is one for each one of you, I'd love to hear about the story without, of course,
I always latch on to people that are better than I am. Like 100%. Like if there's someone doing cooler stuff, bigger things, like I want them in my life. Like, or I want to be part of their life rather.
Right, but
for me, it's been in my surroundings. Like I've met them at dinners with mutual friends or through work previously when I was working for someone. Of course, I would always latch on to the most charismatic person on the C-level and learn what I could from them.
For me, it's been a bit more indirect in the sense that I love consuming content around the stuff that I love. So in a way, they're mentoring me. If I'm listening to a good podcast or an interview or even Instagram Reels sometimes, you know, there's gold all around us.
Right.
We just don't want to sometimes listen. And then I'm a part of YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which is also a great platform of like-minded people. It's a very structured way in a circle of confidentiality. You're sharing your challenges and learning from each other's experiences or through learning events. So I think all of these things come together and kind of mentor you, but I don't have like one person that I reach out to.
I don't have one person either. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So every morning I listen to a podcast, at least an hour, hour and a half. My favorite one is called Founders. And this guy basically just reads an autobiography or a biography and then just explains the whole thing. There's a lot of mentorship that comes from that. But when I moved to Africa, I moved with one of my best friends and his father. They were based in West Africa and I worked with him and his father. And his father was very much a mentor to me. I learned all my business knowledge, accounting, finance, marketing, all of that from him over a 3 or 4 year period. And I was very, very close with him all the time, learning. So that was kind of like my mentorship. But meeting the right people in a room and then having a coffee after, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, because obviously those people don't have much time, I think can be so valuable. You can't underestimate how powerful that connection might be for you later down the line to sell something. Not in a pushy way, but an opportunity could open the door for you.
A big part of my network as well naturally become mentors because they're in different fields. Like a lot of them are company owners or high up in the career. So it's natural for us to talk about situations that arise at work or challenges, you know, and it's just that I discuss different topics with different people. If I have an HR situation, rather than guessing, I'd rather go over it with someone who is better in that field than I am.
I think if you sort of have to look back, right? Like, I mean, how many years has it been since each of you have sort of started your respective businesses? I'd love to know that.
I just celebrated 10 years.
10 years.
Burger 28 is 8 years.
14 years.
14 years. Wow, wow. Times have changed, right? If you had to get a startup sum right now, what would be that business that you'd want to be a part of?
I have recently started something, but I haven't announced it yet. But I would go into real estate. If today I would start something new, I would go into real estate. But it's because my major is sales, right? And I think real estate is an interesting industry. You can do it wherever you want. It's a global one. And there's very interesting numbers in real estate as well. So I think that's motivating. Although monetary is not my primary goal for my company, I am very motivated by numbers. It motivates me to work with big contracts, which is why I would pick that industry.
It's fascinating how now real estate has kind of become part of the content creation. So many real estate companies which are looking at content creators as being part of the sales machine. It's quite interesting.
I think in this day and age, I would look at something like I was saying earlier, which is an idea of a guy called Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you know him.
Yes.
But where you have maximum leverage today is with code and media. So it would be something around building a business which wouldn't need that many people. I think having a lot of staff is really messy. It's hard to deal with people. It's hard to get them to do what you want them to do. So it would be some element of having a media engine or an entertainment company where you're creating content and then some sort of code component connected to that. I would want there to be like a monthly subscription.
It's a SaaS business.
Some sort of SaaS business. Yeah. What exactly it is, I'm not sure, but those would be kind of the components that I would want to interact.
Kind of media and tech convergence, SaaS
Yeah.
business. Avinash, what would that be?
Insurance. If I had to do it all over again, it would
again.
be insurance. I goddamn love insurance.
Along the same lines, I think we're in once in a generation move to AI. I would love to do something in the AI space, but in consumer, because I love B2C. I love brand building. There's a confluence there. I like this line, actually. I might steal it. Media and tech are the only two things that are scalable. Is that the line?
Yeah. The highest leverage.
Yeah, the highest leverage. So
So you basically have
You know,
human capital, which was the oldest form of leverage, where
Correct.
I can carry one stone, we can all carry. I can get 3 people to carry a stone, and people got fabulously rich. And then the second one is capital, money. So people who knew how to move capital around is way easier than getting people to do things and easier to multiply. And then code and media, we come back to the property of code and media is there's no cost of marginal reproduction. So as I said, we recorded this for 1 hour, but for him to watch it or the whole world to watch it is the same cost.
Correct.
There's no marginal cost of reproduction. The same thing with code. You could, yes, you have AWS servers. Yes, you have all this stuff. But technically, you could write a piece of code like Bitcoin and then unlock trillions of dollars of value. But you could also make a piece of code that nobody wants to use as well. I mean, there's 2 sides to it.
Correct.
But there's something really interesting about
this is
that.
incredibly powerful.
Basically, what he does is he kind of tries to sort of build the Maslow's law, which
Yes.
is the needs hierarchy, right? So he tries to take that and converts that into a leverage pyramid. So just like how needs move up, he tries to build how leverage is prioritized. And what you said is absolutely right. And code and media just up there when it comes to leverage in today's
I think,
times.
it's good advice for
But also-
anyone starting out.
Yeah.
Just focus on code and media if you want to build something big.
100%. And I think there's still spaces, just sort of taking corollary from that is it's still not been leveraged. Like you spoke about work-life balance, you spoke of friendship, for example. People haven't codified that.
What's a friend?
Exactly. And people would love to sort of get introduced to a friend through code, right? There's going to be, I'm sure, in the
There
future,
are
there's
friend
going to be,
apps, there's already out there.
yeah, but in terms of, would there be spaces where you can actually have your own personal companion, an app which would tell you if this friendship parameter is right with someone?
That's interesting. I never thought about
Yeah,
that.
there's so many spaces which are yet getting structured.
I was reading an article and I think it's like 5 or 6 out of every $10 invested in AI is on some sort of companionship
Correct.
application with an AI.
Yeah. And on tangibly, it seems very bleak, but imagine an app which actually is your own personal companion, reads through all your conversations on WhatsApp, everything with your friend, and comes back and say, here's a true friend, you need to spend more time with him.
You're onto something there, bro. I like that.
Right? So I think
I'm like, everyone is replaceable, but sure.
there are spaces which are we feel today are very intangible, which can be made tangible with code.
Definitely.
And I think that's the space. Aging, right? Huge space. 20, 25 years down the line, if someone could build a app at 50 be at the same kind of energy levels at 20, and it teaches you through 30 years of your life. That's gold. This is the last one. It's about unpopular opinions within your business in terms of what people think is right, but you think is wrong, or what people think is wrong and you think is right.
More broadly, when it comes to business in general in Dubai, a lot of people say the market is so price conscious. It's all about price. That is so untrue. Every consumer, every business looks for value. Businesses that are able to crack a value proposition are able to do so well. And I give examples all the time of companies that have consistently been cheap and consistently not had any market share, and have also had to consistently recapitalize and thereafter maybe sometimes even shut down. So big misconception that the market is price conscious. I think no market is price conscious if you know how to build a moat and a value proposition.
An interesting point on that is when LVMH bought Tiffany, he increased the price by 3x, I think, or 4x or something. It's incredible how much value unlock there is that businesses just don't look at because they think they want to be only low cost. Couldn't agree more. I think in the restaurant industry, the biggest misconception is that it's easy. Everyone assumes that it's something that's pretty easy. There's obviously not that many barriers to entry. Like you can buy the same buns as me, you can get access to the same meat. So it's difficult to build a competitive moat. But some people have capitalized on it and built phenomenal businesses around it. What is beautiful is the cash business. So you get cash today and you pay your suppliers 30, 60, 90 days, which is really nice. In Africa, when we were selling apples, it was in the beginning cash and then after time turned into credit. And I know how difficult a credit business can be when you're just 24/7 following up payments. You're not able to actually focus on your core business. So
Right.
that can be a headache.
But why do some products actually go viral? I mean, there's no real code to it, but I'm sure you've got thoughts on it. Your burgers have gone viral.
Yeah, so we became famous for something, and this was ages ago. I still haven't been able to come up with something again after everyone's like, just do it again. I was like, I don't know how. Basically, it's called the cheese volcano. So they put a can on top of your burger. They put cheese and Cheetos, and it just looks like a volcano. And I remember the first time I did it, I was like, whoa. What is that? Especially with the red and the cheese and everything. And I posted it on Instagram, and it just went absolutely
Yeah.
ballistic.
Crazy. Did people drive long distances?
We used to,
have-
back in the day, people would drive from Dubai to Abu Dhabi.
Do you still
to
serve
try
it, or?
Yeah, we still have it, yeah. But it's so over the top, you know what I mean?
The biggest one, in my opinion, is that content creation is not a real job. Influencer is not a real job. Anyone who says that, you haven't seen the numbers, baby.
Right. From a monetization point, you think
You haven't seen it.
Can't match.
So it's okay. You think that. It's okay. You think that.
Awesome. I think it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Learned so much from each one of you and how you're doing your business. And I'd love to stay in touch. So that's it from our side. Thank you for today. And we look forward to sort of having another round with some great, amazing people and talking about how they build their businesses.